Virtual Leadership Summit, sponsored by JP Morgan Chase. The summit will take place March 17th through the 19th, and our theme is Our Digital Future Accelerated. We have an exciting lineup of speakers and sessions, and we look forward to be able to connect with the entire HITEC community as we discuss how technology will continue to shape our digital lives and how Hispanic tech leaders are creating meaningful change and working to create a better world. I invite all of you to register, and I look forward to seeing you March 17th through the 19th. Today's session will discuss how companies have pivoted to working remotely and how companies have faced major challenges in this new digital reality. Today's discussion will walk us through how companies are successfully recovering and reimagining the support in a hybrid model and how they empower their employees with intelligent support. I'm pleased to introduce our panel for today. Silvina Olkies, Senior Director of Global End User Support Services at Microsoft. Bailey Szeto, Vice President for Information Technology, Customer and Stellar Experience at Cisco. And Matt Hempey, Principal PM Manager, Digital Workplace Productivity and Collaboration at Microsoft. Silvina, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, hi everyone. Let me share my screen here. Hopefully you can all get the chance to. Okay, can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Excellent. So
that'll probably be the most used phrase during the pandemic and remote work from home, right? Can you see my screen?
That's for sure, you know. Yeah, hi everyone. Glad to be here. I'm you know, one of the happy members of this HITEC family. So I would like to welcome you all to this webinar. As Omar mentioned, we're going to be talking about the future of work and the employee experience. You know, I'm with Microsoft. I've been with Microsoft for 21 years, mainly focused throughout my career on employee experience and customer service, which are, you know, the areas that I feel most passion for. So, you know, happy to be here. Lately, as many of you, you know, I've been focusing on the COVID crisis management, you know, since we started, and also focus on the return to the workplace. You know, as we start seeing more and more countries that allowing people to, you know, go back to the office. And lately I was sharing, you know, before the call started that, you know, I got the chance to join a very, what I consider rewarding and inspiring effort, which is, you know, the creation of a vaccination clinic that Microsoft just launched in Washington State, where we have our headquarters. So, you know, it's been really rewarding to see, you know, how we can help the community. So basically we are supporting two hospitals in the Puget Sound area that are giving Pfizer, Moderna, and hopefully soon Johnson & Johnson vaccines to the community. So today I have the pleasure to share this virtual stage with Bailey and Matt. So I'm gonna let them introduce themselves.
Thank you, Silvina. So first of all, I'm pleased to be here as an honorary member of HITEC. 2 years of high school Spanish, so I can understand a tiny bit, but glad to be here. For the past year, I, much like all of us, we've been working two jobs, right? You have your day job and then you have your night job. And then for me, the night job has been leading Cisco's response to the pandemic from an IT perspective. And to share a really quick story here, I was at a dinner party about this time last year. And, you know, obviously the virus was in the news. It was just in Asia. I was talking about, oh, you know, I wonder if we need to work from home, what do we need to do? Maybe we need some more VPN capacity. Maybe we need this, that, or the other thing. Little did I know that my boss overheard me kind of talking about it. And then a week later, Wynn was like, oh, we better do something. She's like, oh, Bailey, why don't you lead the effort? So one big learning for me during this time is when at a work function, stick to the weather. Otherwise, you might get stuck doing a big job. But anyways, all joking aside, it's been very rewarding to lead the company through kind of pandemic response. And actually now, much like Silvina, I'm sure Matt as well, I'm looking at the future of work. So getting ready for the next stage. Matt, I'll hand it over to you.
Hey, everyone. Nice to meet you. It's a real honor to be able to speak to you today. Thank you, Sylvie, for inviting me. Sylvie and I have worked together for a number of years, and specifically on meeting rooms. In the last decade or so, I've been in charge of evolving our meeting room technology. And we got to a point at Microsoft about a year ago where we just about gotten it right. And we had increasing satisfaction across the globe in our meeting rooms. And then we decided not to use them for the next year, and everyone went home. So I suddenly found myself asking the question, okay, what's next? You know, what is the future of our workplace? How are we going to adapt? What are going to be the changing expectations when people come back to the workplace? What do we need to design for the future? And obviously, it's not just about the workplace anymore. What new problems do we need to solve to help people work from home? And then most importantly, to be one community when all of us are virtual. This is not about connecting distributed teams. This is about connecting distributed everyone. And so this is an area that I'm really passionate about and excited about, and actually more optimistic than ever, because I believe that it crystallizes our challenges. You know, to the way that I tend to think about it is that, you know, before we thought about the workplace as the default or even a monopoly on our work time. It was just assumed that, you know, the workplace had to kind of cover everything. Well, now we have a choice. We have a reason to return. We have to make a decision whether the value we get returning to the office is worth the commute to do it. And so that's a really fascinating problem to have, and to sort of understand what is going to be that return on our investment when we go into to the office to do our job. So that's just a little bit of introduction, and I'll hand it back to Sylvie to start us into the presentation.
Yeah, thanks, Bailey and Matt. So as we mentioned before, you know, nowadays, you know, companies are really looking into the hybrid workplace as the new world of work. So today we're going to spend, you know, we want this to be very interactive, but really trying to share our experiences, not only, you know, for Microsoft and Cisco, but, you know, I can invite the audience to, you know, if you want to share your experience, and also to have an open conversation on how we are preparing for that future of work. So probably you all seen lots of different survey results around you know, the employee sentiment around that hybrid workplace. And, you know, some of them are showing that most business leaders find, you know, this hybrid workplace to be very positive, you know, when looking at productivity or work-life balance, or the opportunity to achieve some cost savings, or even, you know, to increase and enhance sustainability. But, you know, we all, as we said before,
Hey, Sylvie, maybe before we go on,
yeah,
I know that our business leaders see hybrid work as a very, very positive. But I think if you were actually asked employees, you might actually get more of a mixed result. From a business leader perspective, oh, I don't need all these buildings. Great, right? We save on real estate. But, you know, I think many of us, when you think about that work-life balance, I think actually maybe we haven't found the secret there yet either. Most employees are actually saying they're putting kind of insane hours in. You know, I think more people are working more than they ever have before. So there's something we have to do to find that right balance of work-life balance. And then the other thing that I'm hearing a lot is it depends on where you are at life. If you're actually, you know, have a family, then work from home, probably great, right? Get to see your family more often. But if you're early in career and maybe you're just renting a room from, another family, it's actually been a very lonely time for many of the early in career folks because they're not with their families. They're maybe stuck in an apartment building somewhere or a single room. And so maybe this hybrid thing, this work from home period hasn't been the greatest experience for everyone as well. So as we evolve towards hybrid, we have to solve all those things going forward.
Totally, Bailey. And I was going to comment that even many times, especially for people in the US, we take for granted that we have several rooms or we have some luxury that even, our employees in other parts of the world, they don't have, talking to some peers, in Japan or other countries where they are, probably 5 in the family and they had to really build and be able to work and study and do everything in, as you said, a single room or 2-room apartment. So certainly, the well-being, as I'm showing here, is one of the concerns that we have as leaders, and even that the employees are raising. Also, the amount of time that people spend in front of their devices, their screens. That these people are telling us, hey, it's like I'm burned out, what can we do differently? So I think that it's gonna be kind of a mix of, working from home whenever it's possible, and people, would like to have that flexibility and have the opportunity to go back to the office, to meet with people, to be able to expand their network, because these are all concerns that we are having, even how we maintain that productivity when, we try to change processes, adapt, and at the same time trying to educate our people to do probably most of the things in a different way when they go back to the office. The other one is how we keep, and probably Matt, you can talk a little bit about this, is how we make people to feel included. Now we are all, or most of us, working from home, like today, we are all trying to, join this webinar remotely, but in the future, we're gonna have that mix. Now, some people are at the office and now some others, we stay at home. How you make people still feel included, and that they still are kind of first-in-class citizen, regardless of, where they are at. So Matt, do you have any comments around it?
Yeah, this is probably one of the biggest challenges, I think, for the future is, inclusion is no new term. We've been talking about inclusion for years. And, as a person who's focused in the video conferencing space, the challenge was always to bring enough fidelity for remote employees that they would have some sort of reasonable experience versus the people in the room. And, ironically, what happened that promoted inclusion more than almost anything was just getting everyone out of the room and all on the same page together. And that did wonders, actually, for our internal employee satisfaction with meetings. I mean, to my chagrin, as someone who spent so much time on the room itself, just taking the room out of the equation raised our internal satisfaction with meetings quite a bit, because people felt that everyone was on the same page. That ultimately that moment of nerve when you're speaking to your executive vice president in that meeting in front of everybody else. Well, now that executive vice president is just one more square on a gallery mode, and there's a certain amount of lack of politics and just the lack of interpersonal kind of the nuances of a big important meeting that are mitigated when we're all in our own environments. And that's good. But at the same time, we lost something very real. And I think that I would describe as connection. It's the other side of inclusion, where yes, we're all on the same page, but at a reduced capacity, as a reduced fidelity. And I don't think anyone truly believes that that being at home forever is, without downsides, or that there is no advantage to going back to the office and having those rich, full fidelity, in-person, relationships and conversations. It's the chance to connect with folks in and around the meeting, the chance to sort of really sort of deeply collaborate in a way that you can't today. And so we know that we want both. And I think that just, it is a challenge. It is especially a challenge in that the investment required and the time required to equip our facilities with the right technology is expensive and hard and long. And so I think that this is going to be something that we need to keep our focus on the North Star, which is that ultimately we want everybody to contribute to the extent that they are able, wherever they are. And we need to continue to think about moving away from an emphasis on any one space, be it the room or the home office, to participating all together in a virtual space. And a lot of the work that we do is really about enriching that virtual space. So for instance, being able to raise your hand virtually has done wonders for our ability to bring people together across virtual and physical. So I don't think there are any easy answers to this. I think it is more about understanding the challenge ahead, understanding the direction and the North Star that we want to go. We don't want to exclude, but we absolutely want to continue to bring people up to that North Star of having the fidelity and richness of an in-person interaction wherever you are.
Matt, I don't want to lose a very important point you make. We always, or at least I do, and I think this group is called HITEC, which has IT in it. So we always tend to focus on the technology. But as we think about the future of work, one of the key things is what's the cultural changes we're going to make to enable the future of work. And as you said, we leveled the playing field when we forced everyone to be virtual. And now we actually have to incorporate that learning as we go forward so that we don't go back to the split where people in the room have an advantage over people that are remote. So that's a really important learning, and we got to figure out how to actually make it a part of the company culture to say this is how we're going to operate, even if we're actually back in the office in the near future.
So Bailey and Matt, you touch on a great point related to culture, which is certainly a concern, especially in two aspects. One is how you enable and start instilling your company culture on new employees. That's a challenge that we faced on a daily basis. We onboard lots of new employees, and from a technology point of view, you can make it happen. You send the equipment, you make sure that they get connected, so you can make that work. I think that the biggest concern and the challenge that companies are facing is how you start instilling that company culture virtually, in the sense that some people right now, we are going through this discussion of bringing people back, let's say in Puget Sound, in the main campus. And the question is, we onboarded so many people that they don't even have an office. We never gave them the basic, so they don't have an office to go to, right now. So how, we really focus on instilling that culture for new people while making sure that, the existing employees, we maintain, the culture, and that we are not seeing that negative impact. So is there anything that, in the case of Cisco, you guys are doing, or any best practices to share, and we can share, what we do at Microsoft?
Yeah, I'd love to share, and obviously I'm super interested in hearing what Microsoft does as well too. For now, while we're all still at home for the most part, a couple of our offices are open, but for the most part, most of the Cisco's offices are still shut down. We try to do our best to kind of instill that company culture through, using the same technology like we're on right now, right? So the virtual meeting. So one thing that we started off during the start of the pandemic we actually had what was called the Cisco Check-In. And this is where our executive leadership team actually had a weekly meeting, company meeting, where they just talked to the employees. And at first it was just, maybe focused on the pandemic, like kind of bringing in doctors to speak to employees. And as we had it week over week, it kind of morphed from kind of a serious meeting to let's just kind of reinforce the company culture. Sometimes we would bring in artists, other times, it'd be Chuck's, our CEO, Chuck Robbins, he'd bring in, star athletes. And, as we went week to week, it almost became kind of like a talk show. It was a reinforcement of Cisco culture. Sometimes it was serious and sometimes it wasn't. And then obviously at the org level, department level, I think everyone's used to seeing the virtual coffee time, virtual happy hour, that type of thing, right? And so it was a little bit, kind of forced, a little bit kind of artificial, but we had to do what you have to do to try to keep that culture going. As we look forward to the future, one of the things that we're working on, and I think many companies are, is we know that the real estate, the office of the future is going to be different. We're not going to actually tell everyone, hey, you have to be on the campus. And so we're shrinking our campus size a little bit with the idea of saying that when someone chooses to go to the office, and we're acknowledging that it's going to be a choice. You might work from home, 3 days a week, and then maybe go in the office 2 or whatever works for you. But we want that time when you go back to the office to be a reinforcement of the company culture. So that means the building is going to be a little bit more decorated in the company culture, so that when you go in, it's not just a generic office building. You're really going to get a dose of the Cisco culture when you go into the office. And so that's really our intent right now, is to redecorate, kind of refurbish a lot of our buildings so that they're a lot more reminders of the company culture when you decide to go in. I'd love to hear what Microsoft is doing.
Boy, that's a really big question. And, I think that what I've observed over the last year is how dynamic this question, the answer to this question is. It's evolving, month by month as we all go through the phases of, moving from, okay, we're all working from home. How do we make sure that everything works and everything is still productive, to how do we sustain this, to how do we now start thinking about returning, and then ultimately to what is the culture that and the new norms that we'll establish after we're back. And as you go through those phases, I think what's been most helpful for us is to identify a set of principles that we can constantly come back to in terms of how we are, how we are progressing through the challenges in a way that is consistent and ultimately in the service of our employees. And of course, the first one when we think about this has been flexibility, and it's just obviously the every single service that we provide, we now need to look at that in terms of how effective it is for employees that may not be in our facilities, and we will continue to look at how do we virtualize and make sort of virtual first versions of all of the services. So for instance, Sylvia and Tech, our Tech Link internal support, it used to be, we had basically kiosk offices that you could go to and show up and get quick service, right? And now we really have to rethink that for how do we democratize that across the world. So that's an example of flexibility principle and how that needs to change. Another one is well-being. That one of the things that I've found is probably most at the center of our journey, of each of our individual journeys, is the effect on our lives. It doesn't really matter who it is. We have all had profound challenges in terms of how we've gotten through. Whether for me, I'm an introvert, and actually, so working from home has been pretty nice in many regards, except for the fact that my kids could barge in any minute, and and that presents a whole set of challenges that I never had to think about before. And so all of us, have these major challenges, and so really investing. Not we thought about well-being as, do we have nice cafeterias and maybe a break room and some nice gardens on campus that we can walk around. Now it's really about, how do I disconnect? How do I manage distraction? How do I, handle the constant, cacophony of priorities that are hitting me in every direction. And so I think well-being is our second principle. And I spoke about inclusion a little bit before, and that is obviously a principle. And then the fourth one for us is effectiveness. Is ultimately, what do we need to do at every point to not only allow people to be productive, but to enhance productivity. And this is where I think that we will look to our facilities going forward as being real differentiators. Is that we want to invest. When you come to the office, it's because you have tools and experiences available to you there that are just impossible to replicate at home. Some of the real-time collaboration, for instance, technologies that we can provide at the office, or virtual reality, augmented reality experiences would be great reasons why going to the office, or the ability to just, engage in highly social experiences. So doubling down on those going forward. But also, it's not just about effectiveness at the office. It's about effectiveness at home too. I'm a little bit of techie, and so one of the things I've relished is the ability to just completely
I notice it with your microphone.
Yeah, exactly. This is so much fun for me, but I know it's not fun for everybody. And I think a lot of people sort of say, well, how can my company help me to have the most productive and efficient work set up from home? And so I do think that while we're not, getting the business of remodeling people's houses, to our corporate office standards, we definitely do need to increase the guidance and the support we provide for people to not just have a laptop, but to have a full setup in terms of technologies that can help us focus, can help us be productive at home. That's going to be another major area of investment for us going forward.
And I think to Bailey's point of also the social aspect of it, as you mentioned, we're also trying to, we are leaning towards a more social type of environment, where we call it, probably touch points where people can go, while they're socializing, they get up to speed with, the different projects. And as you said, they might be going to the office 2 days per week or 3 days per week, but we want to still enable that for the employees. But I would like to really hear, from the audience. I don't know if anyone wants to unmute and share your experience and what your company is doing to really keep people engaged, motivated, and looking into this future of work.
No, as folks are unmuting, I'll just put one more thing out there, which I think is interesting. And I know, Cisco, Microsoft are friendly in some areas, we compete in others, competition, all goodness. But I think to Matt's point about enabling the employee with the right technology to work from home, two things I think are missing still in the overall portfolio of technologies. The first is, I don't think whether it's Cisco or Microsoft or Zoom, we haven't really quite figured out how to do collaborative whiteboarding very effectively. I think there's all solutions. I have one right now. I can use this pen and write on the screen, but it's still not quite to the degree of going into a room and using that whiteboard, right? And more importantly, as we think about the future of work, how do you actually connect whiteboards in office buildings to people at home and have that collaborative experience? The other thing that I find super interesting, especially as a networking person, a networking company, is when I talk to customers, they're like, Bailey, I'm working from home. My spouse is working from home. I got 2 kids. They're playing Xbox. And, I think the home internet that you get from ISPs there needs to be some kind of traffic prioritization or kind of QoS, because we have all that demand going into a single connection, and it's not enough to kind of balance everyone. So I think they're going to have to evolve that technology a bit so that you can actually say, hey, work takes priority over some of the fun stuff that might be happening, or YouTube videos or whatever, Netflix. There has to be some way of kind of making sure that your connection when you're working is as high a quality as possible.
Yeah, and I would say that that's kind of one of the main pain points we've been hearing from our employees as well, how to deal with that, especially when you have your kids, studying from home, plus you're trying to, present and be on video, and you have your husband, trying to do the same.
Yep.
Yeah, it's like you need to make turns. So now it's your turn to turn the video on. But those are certainly, the challenges that we are all facing. So anyone from the audience, I don't know if anyone wants to share.
I'll jump in.
Yeah, I'll go for it.
Hey, Jason.
Hi. So I have actually a couple of thoughts on this. One, I truly appreciate the fact of being home. I'm a middle-aged man with a very young child, my wife and and I would never have gotten to be able to see his first steps. But that is a moment in time that I was able to witness. I was there to hear his first words. I was there to capture moments that I would never have been able to actually see, maybe get a video from a daycare or from nanny or whomever, but I wouldn't have witnessed it. And those are the moments that we truly have to cherish as human beings. That said, there is a degree of loneliness and a degree of disconnect with the team. So what we've done is, myself and a few cohorts, is we've come together and we provide parenting advice to new parents. We have just opened up forum where if someone's just having a terrible day, they can just vent and they can let loose and say whatever you want to say. Sometimes I learned some new words on these forums, but the true benefit is to allow them to open up, to let off the steam, for them to know that they're still connected with someone. So this is just a couple of ways that we do this to help stay connected in a very disconnected world.
Thanks for sharing, Jason.
Yeah, I could maybe add on to that. So this is Oscar. I'm over at Cisco. Hey, Bailey. Yeah, so our team, it seems to have, it's ironic. We went to shelter in place and we're all working from home. But if I were to compare our team now and how we were before, we're much more connected now than ever. And it's what we did. I guess touching on culture within our team, what we ended up doing is having working sessions. So we connect maybe every other day for an hour and a half. And that actually, those connections create more connections offline because it drives other discussions. So what we end up doing is we're removing silos. And I think that's helping us a lot. Not to say we should all be working from home all the time, but there is that balance. And I think, Bailey, to your point, how do we bridge that gap where people that are in person don't benefit more than the ones that are not, they're on the call? So how do we enable that for people that are remote? So that's been our experience.
Oscar,
I think the most important thing is exactly what you said, is like we found some magic in forcing everyone to work from home. Like you said, the connections that you've built. And we just have to, like, our job as leaders is to make sure that we don't lose that magic as we go back to something different. So how do you take the learnings of what we've actually discovered already and codify it and say that's our new norm, even as we change into this hybrid environment going forward?
Yeah.
Oscar, I'm wondering if we can double click on those working sessions that you're doing every other day with your team. What do they look like? Like just practically, what is that time, that hour and a half time spent like?
It's white space at the end of the day. So it's just time the team comes together and whatever is the hot topic of the day, or even if they want to talk about what happened over the weekend, it's just for them to connect. Normally, for instance, today we had our working session. There was a few things that were going on in production. So we talked about that and some other things that are happening in other parts of the company. We talked about that. I take that as an opportunity for me to give pass downs to the team so they're connected as well. So it's just for the team to connect and talk. It's just white space. There's no agenda. It's just a working session. That's all it is.
Got it. Thank you.
I can share a little bit. My team is global in nature, so we've always been telecommuting, if you will, doing things on video for a very long time. Pretty tight-knit team. But what I think helped, there was new pressures, right? Especially those with young children having to do homeschooling, things of that nature, that but pressures that the folks didn't have to deal with before. And being there for each other in a new and more encouraging and listening way was very critical for us to continue that tight relationship. And then one little thing that I'd share with you that seems crazy, but it has a tremendous effect. They play games once a week. We just basically set aside a half an hour once a week. Whoever's able to come comes. There's no pressure to come or not come, and they typically are there, and they just play games, and they really enjoy it, and it takes a lot of the stress out of whatever's going on, and it has brought the team a lot closer together just doing that one little simple.
Interesting
Yeah.
how we're able to do things that probably we've not done before. We even have some dancing activities, singing, things that, probably when we were at the office, we were not even thinking or trying to organize anything like that. So I think we, the beauty of, or one of the benefits of, this pandemic situation is we are even putting more focus on people. We even know more about their families, what they are doing on a daily basis. We got to know their dogs, their people that are at home. So in the past, we were more reluctant to, it's like, oh, if it's noise or anything that would prevent us from having a good meeting, we were trying just to, push them away. Now it's part of our daily, rhythm. So that's really important. I don't know if anybody else wants to share. If not, Bailey and Matt, we can talk a little bit about what our companies are doing, to increase the productivity. I know that many people in the audience, probably they're wondering, okay, what is Microsoft, what is Cisco doing in these areas, of creating a more productive environment, how we embrace AI, automation. So I don't know if any of you would like to talk about that. I can also share what we do in the support space, but
yeah, before we go into that, I just wanted to react to what Benny said. So I love the idea of playing games together. Obviously most people have done, Zoom workouts or, coffee chats or whatever, but it hadn't occurred to me to actually play games as a team. So I'm certainly going to adopt that. That's a great idea. One other thing though, that I'm actually I really love this answer from our CEO. So everyone was dealing with too many meetings and, spread out over the whole evening. And so one of our employees said during the check-in thing, hey, Chuck, I'm trying to deal with too many meetings and balance with, my family life as well. I think you mentioned, we're homeschooling and parents having responsibilities. And this particular employee said, like, what do I do if my baby's hungry, right? And Chuck just said, look, if you got a hungry 2-year-old, you have a hungry 2-year-old, tell the people you can't join the meeting. Simple as that, right? So, I think we have it ingrained in us as employees to say we have to accept all meetings that come through. And now what we have to actually start to tell people is like, make a decision. Do you really need to be at that meeting? It's okay to say no to meetings because you either have a personal commitment, you have to take care of your kids, or it has nothing to do with you, right? So that's another changing culture, is moving away from this meeting culture to say it only makes sense to join if you really need to be there, if you're going to actually make a difference. Switching gears, let's talk about the future here, right? So we talked a lot about the pandemic and what we've done, and let's think about the future of work. Right now, there's an intermediate phase of, well, what's it like to be going back to the office and when the virus still is around? And it's very tactical right now, which, like, for example, at Cisco, we're looking at using some of our conference room equipment to measure how many people in a room. And if it's too many, then the meeting equipment will light up and say too many people in this room, as an example. Or do we use our wireless equipment to kind of measure density on a floor? And if, again, we're seeing too many people tending to be in the same area at the same time, then magically facilities comes in and reconfigures the space overnight so that there's no more space there anymore, right? But going into the future, let's talk about the exciting stuff, the future of work. I think most people on this call are probably knowledge workers. And so what we're thinking about is, over time, we've built up processes that require most employees to swivel chair. And what I mean by that is you have to log in somewhere to a tool, maybe find a bit of information, then log into a different tool, and then find another bit of information, connecting those dots along the way to actually get whatever task it is you're trying to work on. So one of the things we're looking at is, how do you actually provide a more seamless experience where the focus is on the task and not the journey to get to that task, right? So how do you eliminate more of that swivel chair so that you can actually focus on generating insights, generating analysis, really being a knowledge worker and not a knowledge fetcher, right? A knowledge creator and not a knowledge gatherer. So that's one thing that we're looking at. And obviously to do that, you're going to mix a combination of AI and some automation, things like that as well. And then on a couple of these other buckets, the hybrid workplace, we talked a lot about it, but we have to figure out how to equalize between people remotely and people in the office, because we expect people to be remote always now, right? I might work in the office 2 days a week, 1 day a week, and I might work remotely 3 days a week. So there's always going to be a hybrid environment. And how do you equalize that experience so that everyone can participate? And I mentioned a few things like, how do you actually make whiteboarding effective when you have, kind of that mixed environment? Humanize the virtual working, I think, I'm not sure. Yeah, I agree with the concept. I'm not sure where to take it. We've already have a culture of turning on video for everything. And in fact, it was interesting to see at the start of the pandemic, like people who weren't used to turning on the video, especially customers, like you definitely need to kind of get people to turn on the video. But what the next step is, love to hear some ideas there of how do you humanize it. And then we talked a bit about making sure the culture is right. So I think that leads to resilient teams. So in a nutshell, those are kind of things that we're working on. We'll pass it on to see if anyone else has feedback for that.
I don't know, Matt, if you wanna share a little bit of what we are doing from, meeting experience, and I can share a little bit about the support experience.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that one of the most important things is, obviously we're going to be investing a huge amount in our real-time collaboration, whether that be whiteboarding or just, better equipping people to meet wherever they are, to duck into focus rooms and have a meeting as a remote attendee even when you're out the office, improve our meeting spaces. That's just going to be a major area of investment going forward. And the expectations are obviously high around that. I think that the more important, or actually equally important problem, is how to think about asynchronous collaboration. And I would sort of characterize that in two ways. One is to take some of the elements of real-time social media, essentially, that we see every day being adopted by millennial generation and Gen Z, and such as sort of the emoji reactions, for instance, in a meeting, allowing you to kind of make some of those more subtle reactions as we go through our daily collaborations without having, it gets us past the serial nature of our collaboration. But it goes well beyond that, I think, to really truly embracing asynchronous collaboration. So for instance, video, video recording is something that my son, I probably posted 5 to 10 YouTube videos in my life. My son outdoes that on a weekly basis, right? He is so good at posting and getting reactions that's almost like, just the language of communication for a younger generation. And so really to double down on that, to create more artifacts that are high fidelity and not just emails or, chats, but really putting your work online for people to be able to react to is really important. To be able to take the meeting and record it and make it available to people that couldn't have been there at the time that you had it. And I think that's going to be crucial, because time zones, if we think about time, that is the most immovable object in work life. And so, as we take advantage of talent around the globe, we simply can't cling to this idea that we can all get together at one time. It just will create far, far too much for, anti-agility in our workplaces. And so we have to be able to get really good at asynchronous. And the other thing, you talked about sort of humanizing virtual working. I spoke a little bit about that. Obviously, the other thing is to think about our facility footprint. And, there is no way that you can take your employee base and have them work, a far greater amount of time away from the office without correspondingly increasing your cost per person per square foot at the office, right? So we're going to have to get much better at dynamic workplace management, workspace reservation, workspace reconfiguration, analytics around how our workspaces are used, what people need from our workspaces. And I would extend that not only in terms of what we do with the building as it stands, but how do we design and build construction going forward? And one of the sort of analogies here is, if you look at the car industry and you go back 5-10 years, the idea that you would improve a car through technology was something that you would, was a given that you would have to plan 4 years in advance to introduce something into the pipeline to drive innovation in a car. A very slow process. Tesla has shown that there is huge demand for much more agile, and rapid innovation in that industry. And it's changing the way that the industry works. It's retooling the industry for more agility. The same thing needs to happen with construction. The same thing needs to happen with building. You can't have a construction process that requires you to lock down your books of materials for all technology investments, sensors, video conferencing, all of that stuff, 2 to 3 years in advance of deployment. And that is currently the way it works today. So we're going to see a huge amount more, I think, disruption in the industry of facility management to get much more agile in the way that we think about deploying our workspaces. So that's going to be a really interesting and very hard problem, because there are obviously things like plaster drying that just aren't going to change. So we've got to think through that to a much greater degree. But some of the assumptions that we've had are going to change.
Yeah, no, thanks, Matt. And another area that I wanted to share is around, the support experience and user support experience, which is marching, through the same path as, any other area. It's, how we make the experience more digital for our users. As Matt mentioned before, people in the past were used to go to this location where that was the entry point for them to receive support, and they love the technicians that they used to interact on a daily basis. Now is how we move into a more digitalized and personalized solution where we guide our users on what's that next step, through workflows, through automation, instead of just, okay, this is what you like, what you're used to, just keep doing the same thing. So for us, it's that challenge of how do we make sure that we learn from this experience and we don't go back, to where we were, where people were more inclined to just that, face-to-face type of support. So how we meet, our employees where they are within an application, within a solution, and be able to guide them through machine learning or AI on what's the best approach to follow to get, their questions answered or their issues resolved. So that's what we really focus on. It requires a cultural change, but I think that people are more kind of probably open now than they've been ever before. So that's kind of an area of investment for us moving forward.
Same here. So I think it's interesting. The consumer experience has surpassed the enterprise experience when it comes to support. So whenever something in my house breaks, what do? You Google it, you find a YouTube video, and you fix it. And you hear your friends like, "Oh, I fixed an air conditioner, or I fixed a barbecue," right? And it's because all those YouTube videos are available. And so I think as consumers, we are now to the point of saying that I can fix it myself. Self-service is the best service. I don't want to call the manufacturer. I don't want to open a case. And I think that from an enterprise support standpoint, we actually have to catch up and be at that same level where employees can just self-service and fix what they needed to fix for the most part by watching videos or by having the right answer pop up through a search.
Yeah, and other things that we are exploring is probably Bailey is the same with you guys is, how about bring your own device? We have a mix right now, but people are really pushing for that, saying, hey, I can do it from home. I use any of the devices I have at home. Why? It will require for me to use a corporate device that, brings other challenges as well. People are talking about bring your own office, not just the device. So that's kind of part of the future, how you put your whole office in a box, and you can move it anywhere. I've even seen people building their office in their backyards, like a phone booth. And that's kind of the future of work for many, families, because probably they don't have that, space within their homes. So I think it's a fascinating topic, lots of opportunities, but I think everything comes back to the culture, and how we enable that culture and people be willing to embrace change. I think that COVID then gave us an option. We had to really embrace it, and that was our only option. So it's more how we take advantage of that moving forward to be able to come up with even a greater and better solution. So I know that we have only a few minutes left. I don't know if anyone from the audience has a question or comment or anything you want to share with the community here. Don't be shy.
Just I would like to say that this is actually very useful, and I'm really enjoying this information. To a great extent, it kind of like solidifies what I have observed myself. So this is somewhat refreshing to see that, we all share a common set of problems, and to some extent, a good set of solutions.
Thanks for sharing.
Wonderful. Appreciate it.
Rosario, thank you for sharing that. And I think that's what this last year has taught us, right? That we not just on this topic, but for everything, right? Hearing that Matt also has, as we were about to jump on this call, he had to transition his son to a class, right? And like, this is something that I think so many of us have experienced, and we all deal with the same things. And so I appreciate Silvina, Bailey, and Matt. Thank you for spending the time with us and sharing what you guys are doing in your companies and what you're seeing and how you're thinking about the changes, not just that have happened, but that will continue to come. Appreciate you so much. So please, HITEC community, I know that you can't clap, but please join me in recognizing, of course you can clap, in recognizing and thanking Silvina, Bailey, and Matt for joining us today. As we've been doing recently, we're going to leave the Zoom open for another 15 minutes or so. I don't think that all of our panelists can stay on for those 15 minutes, but we want to use this time just as an opportunity to network, to share, to have an open conversation about anything and everything that you might want to bring up. So once again, thank you, Silvina, Bailey, and Matt. And we look forward to seeing all of you at our HITEC Spring Leadership Summit coming up March 17th through the 19th.
Yeah, I would say thank you, HITEC, for this opportunity. I